Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final presentation of Dawn or Doom 2017. It's been a great couple of days, and we hope you've enjoyed it and learned a good bit from the sessions you were able to attend. This event is different from most other tech conferences in a few ways, but one of the most important things that sets Dawn or Doom apart is that we make a very determined and deliberate effort to include as many different voices as we can in the conversation. And this conversation about what we think is a terribly important topic, which is the implications and consequences of technology choices. What that's meant this year is that we've actively partnered with the Liberal Arts Big Read Project, the Ecological Science and Engineering Symposium, an art exhibit from the Dublin Institute of Technology, Cranit's Business Intelligence and Analytics Centre Data Dive Competition, and Design Good Now, which is sponsored by Purdue Industrial Design and the Weldon School of Biomedical Engineering. By bringing together so many of the top experts from a variety of disciplines to discuss the role of technology in our lives, I believe that this event is a wonderful example of the kind of educational contribution that a modern land-grant institution like ours can offer. And now we come to our final presenter. And I want to say this is the only, Tom Bradicich is the only presenter that I've ever introduced who comes with his own industrial-sized container of peanut butter-filled pretzels. And so I think that is that gets a +1 on every rating right there. Tom Bradicich is a key figure in the fast-approaching age of ubiquitous computing. He's vice president and general manager at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, a leading global provider and innovator behind the infrastructure that is enabling an Internet of Things and technological advancements like digitally aware smart homes and communities and autonomous vehicles. He directs the HPE Discovery and Internet of Things Innovation Labs in the US, Europe, and Asia, and he and his teams are noted for developing and launching innovative and first-of-a-kind products. Regularly sought after by the media, he has been interviewed by MSNBC, The Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Forbes, and many others. He blogs and authors articles on the business of technology, sustainability, people management, and technology trends and directions. He's writing the book, The First Mover, which discusses his experiences in technical business leadership and innovation. Tom started his career at IBM, where, among other things, he led the design of IBM's first prototype notebook computer, a new product category at the time. He also co-founded and directed the IBM Personal Systems Institute, designed to accelerate technology from IBM's research labs to the marketplace. Prior to joining HP, he worked for National Instruments as a research and development fellow, where he conceived and led NI's big data strategy. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Tom Bradicich.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. It is just terrific to be here and to be here at the Dawn or Doom conference. You didn't eat any of my pretzels, did you? Okay, great. I want you to know that I understand I stand between you and the end of the day here, and therefore I'm going to be brief, and we're going to get out early. What do you think of that? Yeah, you know, in fact, this is a learning institution, and I've been on the adjunct faculty at 2 universities, and I've learned that it's among the only endeavors where the customer is satisfied more with less. The paying customer is happier with less, so you professors in the audience know that for sure. But I have so much to tell you, and I will seek to make it interesting for you, and I hope we can have some questions and answers at the end as well. If you look at the title, we're talking about this new type of data. Well, the data itself, or the source of it, isn't actually new, but the extraction and the use of it is really revolutionizing our world. Now, we're talking about things data. What is a thing? Everything is a thing, simply. And your body is a thing, and it has data effectively embedded in it, and a physician would take your temperature, blood pressure, look at your blood, and take some analog information, and from it derive some very, very interesting prognostic, for example, and then diagnostics, for example. You're healthy, and in my case, you're too overweight. You should lose weight, right? That's the prognosis or the action plan from the data extracted from the thing called my body. Now, your chairs are things. Your toaster are things. Everything is a thing, right? So let's talk about that new world of data that we can extract, because sensors and extraction and analog to digital conversion is getting more and more ubiquitous, less costly, and applying to real business problems, to real engineering problems, to real scientific problems, and to real societal problems. And I'd like to talk to you about that as well. I will start by being somewhat philosophical with you, and then we'll get very practical. And I can do both simply because I have the podium, right? And I learned from watching the Emmys and the Oscars that when you have the podium, you can talk about anything you want, unrelated to the subject at hand, right? So, therefore, please let me share with you some philosophical points of view that we will take and make very real. I have experienced the reality of Internet of Things, Industrial Internet of Things, big analog data applications in the world today, and how they're helping businesses and people. I would like to start by acknowledging my, the late Jim Gray, my friend. He was a fellow at Microsoft Corporation, and he wrote a book in 2009 called The Fourth Paradigm. He talked about 1,000 years ago. We're going way back. By the way, how long do I have? 3 hours?
You don't have 1,000.
To speak? Okay. And he said, basically, that was a description of natural phenomenon. The last few hundred years, we had theoretical science. Many of you learned these laws that are up there, and if you didn't, that's okay. Number 3, computational science. The last few decades, I think you'd agree, there's a lot of intensity with the advent of computers and the fact that we can have very powerful computers in our hand nowadays. And here's what's interesting. In 2009, he said the world would move to data-intensive type of phenomenon, data-intensive activities. Data captured by instruments, data generated by machines, okay? And instruments are connected to sensors, which are connected to the things, like automobiles, planes, trains, the weather, the environment, the earth as well. Let me talk about the sources now of big data, and I think he was right in what this is driving to. It's driving to a whole host of marketectures in the world today. Have you heard of brilliant machines? Have you heard of the industrial internet? Have you heard the Industry 4.0? The programmable world, one of my favorites, cyber-physical systems. All these pop marketectures are emerging, and they're based many times on the fact that there's lots of data coming from things. In fact, if you like, anyone here like big data? If you like big data, you're going to love the Internet of Things and the data coming from things. And we'll talk more about that. Another categorization is recent data sources like, social media, posts and comments and blogs and tweets, and the analysis of that and how important that is. In fact, scientists today will tell you that if they monitor all your posts and your blogs and your email and all your tweets, they can actually predict what you're going to do next. Which, by the way, is pretty easy if you tweet what you're going to do next. But bearing that, I would say if you don't do that, some guy tweets, I'm going to Burger King. Data scientist says, this guy's going to lunch. That'll be $100,000. But the point here is if it's inferential data as opposed to explicit, statistical significance, I think you would agree, comes in. We even have email services telling us how to respond to our emails. Have you noticed that? Today as well. So that's a whole group of data that is different from the traditional sources, which we know as big data. And if you've been in the big data world, you have encountered these. But here's a third one. This is a gross grouping. New things data from natural sources, the physical world, natural phenomenon. DAQ, D-A-Q, stands for data acquisition, where an analog signal, such as voltage or temperature or my voice or the light that you see, the vibration of a turbine, is captured and digitized. Why? To turn into ones and zeros so it can be computed. Why? So we can gain insight from it using analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Why? So we can take action. That's the goal, right? The reason, not a reason, the reason one would collect all this data in a business environment, not necessarily in just pure research, is to take an action on the business. What is that action? It could be controlling a robotic arm in a manufacturing site. It could be controlling an autonomous vehicle. They're getting more and more popular, as you know, today. Let's move on. Things data. What am I talking about? Particulates, acceleration, video, motion, everything from the analog world is valuable. Your location is extremely valuable. Where you went, how long you were there is valuable to people who sell tourism and vacations, to people who sell anything as well. So therefore, this whole world of how to help society from a business perspective, from a health perspective, from a safety perspective, is being based on the extraction of data from things, a new world of big data. So let's look at this. Here's some specifics, and you can just quickly look at this notion of IoT things are the dominant majority now of things being connected, as well. You can connect your dog food bowl to the internet, and it can inform you through a text or a tweet that it is empty. I don't know how valuable that is for you. It's probably valuable for the dog. However, that can happen. That's a trivial example, right? All the way to giant turbines that generate electricity. They burn fossil fuel and they pump out holes or electrons, depending on your perspective. And only one guy got that, yeah. And they can be monitored for when they need maintenance, when they're too hot, when they might fail. It's just a world that's happening before us in a very, very accelerated pace because we have the technology to take these things forward. The analog data from things, now listen, the analog data from things is older, faster, and bigger than all other big data combined. That's a pretty bold statement. Well, when you make an assertion like this, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, wouldn't you agree? But I don't have extraordinary evidence. So I'm going to tell you, I believe it's older, these analog sources, because I believe, if you believe in the Big Bang theory of origins, that was an analog event. There was magnetism, there was motion, there was heat. I also believe, if you believe, in the creation theory of origins, and God said, let there be light, light is an analog event. So it doesn't matter. It's the oldest. Way back, these sources of motion, acceleration, voltage, current, magnetism, particulates, velocity, space and time are quite old, I think you would agree. Is it faster? Well, I don't know things that are much faster than 40 terabytes a second being sampled at the Large Hadron Collider CERN in Geneva. Anyone know anything faster than 40? Every time I give a keynote, I ask because I want to use that number. 40 terabytes a second on a single channel. And then there's video, of course. If it's high definition, that's fast. So these are all analog phenomena being captured. And then is it bigger? Well, think about just the vibration on every electron in this room, in the city, in this world, in this country. Just that, or the light, or the vibration on the HC vents, my heart beating, the blood through all of you. This is all analog source data. It's bigger, it's faster, and it's older. How do we tap into it, and how do we make it the dawn of something good? And then what are the risks? And what are the implications of all this information that is now, in many ways, more personal? We'll talk about that. So these are the pop architectures that have appeared. I think you'd agree that the one that has achieved celebrity status recently is the IoT, the Internet of Things. We've talked about what things are, and the Internet might be a little bit of a misnomer because it's not always the Internet as defined by the Wikipedia, but it's more of a network of things. So if I were to name it, it would have been the network of things. But I wasn't asked to name it, and also that means not, which is negative. But we're going to use this generic term, the Internet of Things. And we're connecting things that will provide data that we will analyze to gain insight to take action. That's the whole idea here. So let's move on with some more definitions. Have you heard about the edge? Another popular term. What is the edge? Well, the edge is really where the things are. Now, I'm going to be a little bit simpler here in terminology just to get through this, but the edge is out where things are. So let's talk about that. It's where the action is. It's where there are new sources of data. So what are some common edges? Well, manufacturing floors, buildings, this room, for example. Your home is an edge now that will have smart things or connected things in it, and it still does. Now your body as well. Electric power grids, electric power plants, energy, medical, homes, people, animals, nature, planes, trains, and automobiles. An edge is also a battlefield. Under the sea, down where it's wetter, is also, I like to throw out these illusions and see who laughs. Hardly anyone. It's everywhere. That's where the edge is. But the edge is also very specifically not something. It's not the data center or the cloud, but it connects to it. Are you connected to a cloud? Well, or a satellite connection for your cell phone? Almost everyone. Everyone is connected to some sort of cloud. And let me demystify the cloud. A cloud is a data center that nobody is supposed to know where it is. So now, if you know where it is, then it's a data center. Where's your cloud? Oh, it's that data center over there. Well, now it's just a data center running cloud apps. Am I right? Well, as someone who personally helped build the first clouds, I know that it's a data center, right? As well. But we kind of call it a cloud because you're not supposed to know where it is, right? It's in the cloud somewhere. But has anyone visited a cloud? I'll bet you have a cloud right here on campus, right? Do you have a data center here on campus? Is it connected? Yeah, all right. You get the point. So now, if it's not that data center and it's out at the edge, but it has IT, computing, storage, connectivity, and it has OT, operational technologies, we call that the edge. There are many types of edges, and I like to group them into three categories. There's operational technology edges, and operational technology is control systems, data acquisition systems, industrial networks that are not IT, where IT is computing, storage, networking, systems management. And IoT edges, and then all the way to IT edges that doesn't have any IoT in it or any, OT in it. But there's a convergence going on of operational technologies and information technologies. And I want to just make that point as a trend because the convergence of things is amazingly powerful. I hold in my hand an iPhone where one day, I assume it was Steve Jobs, I don't know. I never met the man. But God rest his soul, he might have said, you know that music player I just invented called the iPod? Where now we've sort of revolutionized the world. You don't have to carry around a Sony Walkman anymore, a CD player, or remember that thing? I think I'm going to put a phone in it. And I can imagine a phone. We're not a phone company. Well, why would you do that, right? Well, I want to converge things for the consumer, you and me. And then once you get over that and you do that for me, you ain't seen nothing yet because you know what I'm going to put in it next? A camera. Well, we're the Apple company. Well, I already stopped the computer part, right? It's no longer Apple Computer. We're Apple. We can do anything we want. Plus, I'm the CEO, right? So I'm going to put a camera in there, but I'm not going to go further. I'm going to take some revenue away from the GPS business. I'm going to put a GPS in this thing. In fact, I think the flashlight industry is making too much money. I'm going to put it in here. And the leather industry, I'm not even sure I like leather. I'm going to put your wallet in here, right? And so the question isn't what does this do? The question is what? What can't it do? It's a language translator. It's a movie player. What else? But remember what it did for the consumer, you and me. We might carry around a digital camera, a GPS, a text machine, a CD player, a DVD player, a language translator, a flashlight, a big fat wallet. And we're walking around with this, and here we are today. It's converged. You know how many benefits there are to a converged device like this? 7. Not 6, not 8. There are 7. I'm going to use that number a lot. 7. What's one? One benefit of convergence. Just one. Why is this good? Convenience. Yeah, convenience. There's 2 dimensions of convenience. One is carrying it around. The second one is purchasing it. Maybe there's 3. Upgrading it, right? One thing, and you get it. So the value of convergence is incredible. Some genius, smarter than those at Apple, said, I'm going to take that pretzel, and I'm going to put peanut butter in it. This is more exciting than the iPhone to most of you here. And looking around, I just want to remind you, there is a fitness center on this campus, right? And it's open, I think, 24/7. But the notion that I can now pop in my mouth a combination of things that were separate one day, right, as well. So the idea of convergence is very important, and I want you to know that that is happening with two worlds that have been traditionally separated, operational technology and information technology. And I have dozens and dozens of slides, and already into this, we haven't even gotten much farther. But here's some pictures, for you. Where is this IoT? Where are these edges? They are literally everywhere. This room is an edge. This building is an edge. This campus, right, is an edge. So we can't go through all this, but in your home, in healthcare, in cities, have you heard smart cities, another pop architecture, right? Where wouldn't you like to pull into the front of a parking building and tell you exactly where the parking spaces are or are not, or are not? I know we're talking about a type 1 and a type 2 error, right? You go in and you can't find one, that's one error, now you're late. Or, but you drove away because you didn't think there was one, but there is, and now you're late again, right? So you don't want to make either of them, but technology and the Internet of Things, when the thing is the parking space, can help you. That's a very valid, example. We'll talk more about examples. Transportation and retail, farming. I love to go into a store and have an indoor GPS, a wayfinder, tell me exactly where the product is, or where a guy or a girl is that can tell me, where the product is, right? As well. So this whole idea of indoor now GPS. Wouldn't you like to know if the conference room is near you? Is it empty? And also, where are the people? Where's the restroom? Where's the printer that's available as well? The whole world is changing, and it's changing because the edge now is getting intelligent. It used to be dumb. What is intelligence? First of all, it's connected. We're connecting unconnected things. How do you connect something when it doesn't have a network connection? A NIC, a network interface chip, all right? How do you connect something? Either wireless or wire. You can connect it through sound. I am connected to the internet right now through the camera in a live streaming, right? I'm a thing connected to the internet. How? In a very, very air-gapped type way, through the medium of light, because that's what my image is being streamed, right? And then through the medium of sound waves, which are being picked up, digitized, and put on the internet, right, the network. So the whole idea that we can connect, and then we have to compute and analyze things. And we're doing this regularly to compute, analyze, and determine what, usually? Either action or no action. Now think about that. If we could determine that, if you could determine right now that your house is on fire, what would you do? Well, you'd stay and finish listening to me, right? Because I understand that. But after, right, you'd try to take some action. What you do with information and action is that's what we call control, taking some sort of action as well. Now I'm going to talk to you about the 7 principles of the IoT. Some of them are like predictions. And I want you to know that if you don't have convictions, principles, then you can be easily swayed by anybody's opinion, right? And this is extremely important in life of emerging technology because really no one's an expert because it hasn't happened yet. There's no history. So you have an opinion, and then you're in a meeting, and then one conclusion is met with a competing conclusion so as to cancel out all conclusiveness. Have you ever been in a meeting like that, right, as well? So you need convictions, and then you got to change them if they're wrong, but you need something to hold on to get you through all the competing ideas that are out there to move forward in your endeavor, whether it be a research endeavor, and in my case, it's a business endeavor to get product out. And holding on and having patience, conviction, and tenacity is important. So we established 7 principles that we hold to, and we've acted on them, and so far, they have come true, and they're several years old. I'd like to share them with you very quickly. So let's move on. Principle number 1, the IoT presents a big data problem. Not all the time, right? But it does, and it's analog data. I don't know any data from things that isn't analog to start with. In fact, you have so much analog data. I'm a very boring speaker, so now you're texting, right? And you're on the internet, so you use pressure, right, to hit that. And then you'd use one of 3 radios, right, Bluetooth or wireless or the satellite radio of your cell phone as well, right? So all this analog phenomenon is happening here at the edge, and it can present a big data problem. But it's always digitized, right? Or it can't, not always, but it has to be digitized in order to be computed with digital computers as well. Let's move on to the second principle. Perpetual connectivity. What would you do if you were perpetually connected to your products, to your customers, to your environment, to your locations? What would you do? Now, I use this metaphor of the smartphone a lot. Let me bring it up again. One day, I looked at my phone in the morning. Much to my wife's disappointment, it is with me 24/7. I looked at this phone in the morning, and the app for the Apple Watch was on there, and I didn't ask for it. So I am perpetually connected to the Apple company, and also the ISP and the provider as well. And I looked at that app, and there were people who were so happy, and so fit, and so good looking, and I wanted to be that person. And so the implication was, I'm staring at it, if I had that watch, I might have this joy and this capability. That was the implication. So the implication was, Dr. Tom, you already have the app. All you got to do is go buy the watch, right? So that's called selling up. What would you do if you were perpetually connected? Well, one thing is you could sell up, but that's not the only thing, right? There's a lot of things one could do. You could, if you have children, you can watch how fast they're driving now, right? And all kinds of things can happen if you're perpetually connected. But it's this idea, not just connected once in a while, not just dialing up or hoping you're connected, but constantly connected. Okay, let's talk about this notion. When you're perpetually connected, you can, now listen, this is philosophical, but I'm looking at you, I think you're going to get it, right? Okay, location and time dependence, right? If you want to hear me speak, I don't know what they paid you to get here, but if you want to hear me speak, you have to be listening to me in person at the time I'm here, at the location I'm here. If you don't want to be at this location, you can listen streaming live. If you don't want to listen at 4:30 when it began, what can you do? You can look at a recording. Look what technology has done. It begins to eliminate time and place. So we can plot location independence and time independence on this graph, and we can plot human activity. And we can watch things like, how about books and reading? There was a day when I had to do a report on the pyramids. My mother would have to drive me to the library, a place, when it was open at a time. One generation later, my son wants to do the same report, and he can connect anywhere, just about, right, anytime, at the gym, at school, at home, at his friend's house, in the movies, whatever. And use Wikipedia, use the internet, use Google, and do the same thing, right? That's just one generation. So what has happened? Well, Amazon, Wikipedia, Google has moved this up. And the collection of books and the dropping off books, well, the time independence of a 24-hour drop-off, right? That was good because it was no longer depending on time. Okay, let's move on to talking. There was a day where if you wanted to talk to somebody, it had to be face-to-face. Not anymore, right? Well, we have a telephone. Now it eliminated the location dependence, but not the time. If you want a live call with someone, then it has to be at the same time, right? But watch what's happening here with these activities. Then we have voicemail, and we can eliminate time and place, pretty much. You can dial into voicemail. Healthcare. You go to a physician at a place, at a time, and then you wait longer than the time, and then you see the physician, right? That's the way it works traditionally. But then we have something called live telemedicine, where you can have a physician encounter through WebEx or some we call telemedicine. Well, you see the point of what's happening. Then we have store and forward telemedicine, where things can be captured and forwarded, and you eliminate, and here it is, you annihilate place and time. When you can annihilate place and time, you can catapult the activity into higher efficiency. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's not, let's just keep moving. So the quadrant of highest efficiency, the northeast quadrant, we want to get activities there. And that's what the Internet of Things, or the Internet in general, as you already know, it's pretty intuitive. Shopping, banking, right, all happen because we can eliminate time and place. But we want to get other human activity. If we can get healthcare up there, if we can get raising children up there, imagine how, right? So I bring that up because there are some things in intimate human relationships that you can't quite eliminate time and place, right? So not everything can, but many, many things can. And that's what perpetual connectivity allows. Human endeavors can be moved up here. So how can I do that more and more? That's philosophical, but we can make it quite real. If I do that, we get the 3 M's of connectivity and perpetual connectivity, right? One is monitor. We can monitor things, devices. We can monitor the marketplace. We can do risk avoidance. We can do safety and discovery. We can maintain and control things, the famous, maintenance and patches to software in automobiles overnight, in your systems overnight. And then we can monetize and upsell. Look at new revenues like we talked about with the applications being pushed down to the connectivity. There's probably more here, but that's the value that we're seeing in the world today. And notice it's not all about business value. It's also about societal benefits as well. Let's go to principle number 3 of how many? So now I am an adjunct on the adjunct faculty at 2 universities, and there will be a test on this, I want you to know. So we're on number 3 of 7. The IoT is really real time. Now I have to introduce you to this model. Okay, now this is on the test, so study with me. On the left are things, and they're connected through sensors, but not only sensors to collect data, but what else? Actuators to control the things. A robotic arm, a car, whatever the case may be. That goes to stage 2, access and analog to digital conversion. Why do we make 1s and 0s? So they can be computed in stages 3 or 4. Okay, which stages are at the edge and which stages are not? This is a little test. Okay, remember that the edge is not the data center in the cloud. So stages 1 through 3 could be at the edge. There's a hint on stage 3. Do you see it up there? Edge IT, right? So this is a gross simplification, but it's a very good template for discussion. I'd like to proceed with the other principles of the IoT, principles number 3 through 4, associated with this particular model. Okay, now as we've got that down, let's look at data flow. Right when the data is produced, right when the temperature rises, right when the particle appears, right when the transaction takes place, we could call that real time. But notice how fast or how slow it travels all the way to the cloud. By the time it gets to the cloud, this is true, by the time it gets to the cloud, the data can be useless or too old. Now, if that's a principle, that could be a problem, right? If you have to send everything from a sensor to a cloud, it's a problem. So what is the solution to that? Think about it. Well, why is that a problem? Let's say you have an autonomous car. Anybody here? Anyone? Okay, you do. How soon would you like your car to know when you're going 50 miles an hour? How soon would you like to know that the object in front of you is a little girl playing in the road or a plastic garbage can? Would you like to send that to a satellite connection? Because today, September 2017, I can't even make a cell phone call without, right? Can you hear me? You lost it. I was on, one of my colleagues just dropped, today. So my point there is, how soon would you like to know that? Because if you could know it quickly, you would take different action, I believe. And I know this. I'm speaking from experience. This isn't all theoretical. I hit a plastic garbage can going 60 miles an hour on the highway. And I saw that thing coming at me. And I thought to myself, there's a car to the left of me, there's a car to the right of me, and there's a car behind me. Am I going to take evasive action, or am I going to hit it? Well, I floored it just for fun. No, I said, if I'm going to hit it, I'm going to well, I hit it, and I have a big dent in my Audi right now in the front. It's actually fixed in the front of my, right, because I hit it. Now, if that was a person, do you think I would have taken different action? I most likely would have risked hitting a car next to me, perhaps a railing. You see what I'm saying here? How soon do you want to know? So I use that one example about the immediacy of the data. So it's real time for the IoT back at the sensor, and it's real time for IT back at the cloud or the data center, but it could be too old. So what business could you be in to fix this problem? Let's not answer that until we move on to this next one. There's a spectrum of value, principle number 3. There's a value when it's immediate and fresh, and then there's a value when it's even 7 years old. Why is 7 years a magic number? There could be litigation, there could be some issue where you have to go back 7 years and get the data. So there's value at different times as well. If we move on to number 5, this is the key. There's a trade-off. As soon as I collect data at the sensor, the thing, the robotic arm, the turbine, the automobile, the electric power grid, as soon as I collect the data, I can do a cursory level of analytics. Why? Because I don't have a full data center next to the power grid. I can do a moving average, a fast Fourier transform, some sort of data decimation. I can get immediate results, but they're cursory, they're shallow. Contrary-wise, I can send all that data back to the cloud and take, even if it's fast, but take some time, and what can I get? Deep, deep insight. And I can process that for months, like some do in the scientific world, right? I get deep insight, but it's not fast, it's not immediate. So this is called a mutually exclusive mutually exclusive situation, right? I can't get immediate deep, and I can't get deep insights immediately, yet. So now you have a business proposition. Those of you who are students, can you figure out in your careers where you can solve a mutually exclusive objective? You will catapult your career and your company and your organization when you do that. Let me give you an example. When I was a little boy, I joined the IBM company, and my boss came to me. I was a young engineer, and I was out of college, and he said, you have to make this notebook computer. It wasn't called a notebook. You carry it around. And the battery has to last all day, and it has to be light enough to carry around. And you know what I said? I said, that's a mutually exclusive objective, right? Because I can make it last long, but it's going to be darn heavy, and I can make it really light, but it'll only last 10 minutes. And he said, you don't understand. That's what I pay you for. You're an engineer, right? Figure it out. Well, we did. I didn't personally, but today you can carry around a laptop, right, that runs all day on batteries, right? We didn't have lithium back then, by the way. All we had was, it was tough back there. All we had was, remember machine language? And we didn't even have ones. All we had was zeros. It was really rough. It was that bad. Okay, but anyway, here we are. Fast forward. You can solve these mutually exclusive objectives. I want to watch the news. I want to watch the comedy show. I want to watch cartoons. How do you solve that problem? Technology, right? More TVs at a cheaper, right? As well, or you just dictate it. That's a solution, of course. But solving these mutually exclusive objectives through technology do happen, and that's the business we're in here on principle number 5, is how do I get the data center, stage 4, out to the things at the point of data capture? How do I shift out there, right? Well, there's size issues, there's power issues, there's a lot of issues, but we will solve them. Okay, if you're into big data, like many of you are, you know about the V's. And the famous, V's are variety, volume, velocity, and value. But one of the principles of the IoT is the next V is visibility. That's because the edge is where? It's not all happening in the data center, right? Your whole context of big data changes when you think about the data now is out at the edge. Number one, it's remote, and so we have to have visualization. We could send it all back, but because it's big, it's hard to get all back because of bandwidth. See all these challenges we have, right? And again, I'm seeking to get a grasp on this whole world of the IoT and big analog data and things so that we can then opine with rigor and with some level of credentials on the ethical and the risk associated with it, right? So that's the idea here, is let's understand this thing. And principle number 7 of 7, right? The data center class computing analytics will shift left. IDC, a very, very astute consulting firm, has said that they believe at least 40% of IoT data will be processed at the edge. That means it won't be sent back to where? The cloud. So that means what? That you can get insights faster, right? Compute at the edge, analytics at the edge, accelerate your insight. And I use the example, how fast do you want to know that that's a human being in front of you, not a garbage can? How fast do you want to know your robotic arm is out of calibration and it's pumping out 100 defective parts every 30 seconds? Would you like to know that in 3 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you're throwing away thousands of parts? You get my point here? Or would you like to know it immediately so you can take action and recalibrate? Well, and then, the link is down. So now this thing's been pumping all day out. Because the link was down, because I couldn't do an analytic to determine it was out of kilter. I think you get the point. The scenarios are endless on why that is going to be the case. So therefore, we must take stage 4 technologies that are high performance, that have artificial intelligence, machine learning, and not have it captured, not have it pent up in the data center any longer, but we will unleash it at the edge, at the point of data acquisition, at the point of data distribution. You know who's doing that today? Very large cable companies are taking edge computing out to distribute higher performance, high definition services, which is video, audio, news, entertainment, at all kinds of different types of formats because we want them. We have an iPad, or we have a tablet, we have a phone, we have a big screen TV, a little TV. We have all these different formats that we need as well. Okay, that's the 7. And you might have noticed, if you care to hear a deeper treatment, there's a film when I did this keynote at a Bosch conference you can see on YouTube. Okay, let's look at some IoT solutions that exist in the real world today. Okay, here's a smart factory. This is a global aerospace manufacturing company. I won't use their names, but it rhymes with... It's good to have our audience participation. Jerry, you know, I'm the comedian here, okay? You're not that funny.
People laughed when I said I wanted to be a stand-up comic.
Come on up here, yeah.
They're not laughing now.
Yeah, that's right. See, there you go again. Okay. Let me move on here. So what are the things? Well, the aircraft body and the holes. This company fills millions of holes a year, millions. With what? Rivets and nuts, you know, and screws, et cetera. Because they're building these you know, the body of the aircraft, not in flight, but when it's being built, has a lot of holes in it, right? As well, so think about the error there. You have different bolts and rivets, and you have different tools with different calibrations and different torque, et cetera. Human interaction. How do you make an Internet of Things? Well, one thing they're experimenting with is smart glasses, where this is kind of cool. The user or the manufacturing personnel can look at the hole, and then through some advanced and some rudimentary image recognition, it can determine, oh, that's a hole here that needs this type of rivet. The bin that holds the rivet lights up, so it can be selected. And that's not only what happens. The computing takes place either at the edge or wherever it can take place, and the hole is sensed. But here's something cool. Then other things called the tools are things connected in the Internet of Things. So they get controlled, things get controlled, right? Remember the 3 C's, connect, compute, and control. These things can get controlled, and the calibration is automatically set, the torque is automatically set, and the tool itself can blink and say, use this tool with this bolt because you're looking at that hole. And it could also be used with a camera, not just on smart glasses. So this is the type of thing that's going on. It's not quite in production yet, but this is in production. This is by the way, I just mapped the connect, compute, and control, right? That's a circle that you have to have, and it's in 3 C's just so you can remember it. Okay, here's something else that is happening today. There are things called turbines. This is a large US power company. And you know what turbines do, right? They're big, huge things, big as this room, you know, as well. And I went into the manufacturer of GE turbines in South Carolina, and I looked at their manufacturing floor, and that's called an edge for them, right? And they have things called turbines, and they want to collect data so they can understand it. And then I went to the jet engine manufacturing floor at Rolls-Royce Jet Engines in the UK, and they have an amazing study going on with their jet engines where they have to understand what would happen if the blades of the jet engine were to fly out. Once those blades get hit by perhaps a flock of geese, where's the number one place you don't want those blades to go? Just guess. Yeah, into the body, right, of the plane. So there's all kinds of analysis going on to determine its immediate, very quick trajectory. And they have a lot of data there that they can't send to the cloud. So it stays at the edge, you know, as well. Now let's get back to this example. This is a power plant. There are 83 power plants in this company, of which 60 of them, 60-something, have this particular thing. In fact, I stole this slide from them. And then if I put, you know, image courtesy of the company, then I would disclose the company. So now I'm in a, but let's move on. On the left are the things, you notice this follows the 4 stages. They are sensed, they are data acquisition A to D, they move to edge compute and then to corporate data centers. So things like temperature. Now here's what's cool. Have you ever, yourself or your father or anyone, listened to your car and told you what's wrong with it? Or just looked at it and said, there's something wrong here. This is not a Ferrari. But the point is you can sense what is wrong with that mechanical vehicle. My cousin would put his hand on the hood and listen. And he was using his sensors to extract analog data from a thing called the engine, and then he would tell me the prognostic and tell me the action plan. Sell this quickly, you know, or get this fixed, or you follow what's happening. Now, in the world of rotation, you can learn a lot from vibration. There are different vibration signatures that could tell you if something is about to fail or if it's healthy or not. That's the big analog data that's being collected in this application. Temperature, pressure, vibration. It can then, this is the beauty, connect to business IT And then you can, now listen, you can allocate money to replace the turbine or allocate money to repair the turbine. Now listen, I talked about a type 1 and a type 2 error, right? So you don't want to make either. You don't want to repair something when it doesn't need it. I know there is a large pump and valve company that when it does maintenance, it's $150,000, only to discover it didn't need maintenance, right? So that's a waste of money, right? That would be like a type 1 error. What's the other type of error? Well, I'm not going to do maintenance on it. Now it breaks, and then something worse happens. So here's the idea. You right-size the use of your money. You right-time the use of your money. The CFO could say, well, why did you allocate $6 million for new turbines in the year 2019? Well, because we use this industrial Internet of Things that tells us that's about when it's going to fail. Now remember, so I can put a 6. Now, the profundity there is I put away 6 so I don't not have it when I need it, and also I don't put away 26, right? Which would be another error. I can use that money for something else, as well. Okay, and you want to just time it. It would be like dying penniless. That to me is perfect timing, right? You spent it all, and then that was it, right? So that's the idea. You don't want to leave too much. You don't want to not have enough. Notice we can put the stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 up against this. Let's look at a future solution as we go to wrap up here, and we'll have a few minutes for questions. Okay, what is this? This is an American football player, the NFL. The NFL has not received much attention lately, have you noticed? And that issue will have nothing to do with what I'm going to say here. So let's take a look at an NFL player. Now, an NFL player, which is a little bit related to what's happening out there, is an asset of the company. I don't mean to dehumanize, but it's an asset. It's a business asset. And so when you have a business asset, you don't want to make a type 1 error and run it, and it gets hurt or die. You don't want to make a type 2 error, right, or have it sit out when it doesn't need to because it's your star asset or your star player. You get the point. So what can happen? Well, we can instrument this business asset with sensors for health and conditioning to know when maybe you've seen an athlete would run a very long way and then have to sit out for oxygen. Have you seen that happen before? Well, is he there long enough or is he there too long? You don't want to make either error, right? You don't want to put him in too soon. Something happens to his health or his performance. Contrary-wise, you don't want him sitting on the bench if he's your star athlete. You want him back in the game. So you get the point. It's maximizing the use of the asset. And the more data we have, the more we can know whether it's too long or not enough as well. So we can instrument putting sensors. And then I want to talk to you about something called a hit. Now, a hit is a very exciting thing for an American male. And in fact, when most of us American males see it, what do? Let me hear. Yes, yeah. Yeah, it usually is an ooh, very loud, right? And then we talk about that hit, right? How hard that was. Okay. Now I'm saying this as a consumer interest point of view. That hit is an analog event. Pressure. Would you agree? As well. So I believe that because it's so exciting, this is a little bit of my opinion, as well, that we can name this hit, and we can measure it, and we can call it an impact factor. And I believe, and I may be wrong, but I like to predict things that are well beyond my retirement, so I'm not accountable. But I believe that there will be an impact factor, which will be a statistic. There's a statistic today. How many touchdown passes, how many yards run, how many games played. The impact factor will be how hard, for example, a quarterback took a hit, and similarly, how hard someone gave a hit. You could also apply this to boxing, if you think about it, right? So I believe this will happen. We will instrument, and the impact factor will, boom. At the point of impact, it will be analog to digital converted, sent up to some compute system, and it will be part of the player statistics, and people will talk about it, and then it will be broadcast, and we'll see it in our sports bars that this impact factor is happening. So think about it. Boom. I wonder how hard that hit. And it's a little bit like in baseball, how fast is the pitch? There was a time where we couldn't know. Now you see it. It's a stat, right? At 91 miles an hour, whatever the case may be. So because technology advances, we can get information from things that before was unattainable, unleashable, but now is quite valuable as well. And I believe then we will be able to outfit, for example, your cell phone will vibrate to the intensity equal to the hit. Now you are experiencing. Now this is not, rocket science or Nobel laureate, type thinking, because we do this in movie theaters. You've probably seen, and certainly at, theme parks, where you're trying to get an experience as well. But I think it will go to the home. And there will be the actuated chair that will be NFL ready. And we will fight over who sits in it because I want to feel when that guy, makes that hit. So maybe that's going to happen. But this is what you can do when you can take, again, analog phenomenon and use it, in this case, for entertainment. I want to watch it from this network because they provide the impact factor, right? And again, you can apply it to boxing. You can apply it to many things. Okay, as we wrap up, we talked about a few things. Lots of new types of sources of data. We're unleashing pent-up data in things. Isn't that exciting? Take a look at that chair next to you. What is in there that you could learn from? So many things are happening with respect to data from things. Number two, things are getting perpetually connected. Constantly, never breaking down, eventually, right? We'll have that connection. And then this notion of location and time independence. You realize someday you will never have to interact with another human being again. Some of you are excited about that. That's why you're here tonight, as opposed to out there having fun, right? Okay, so with these new types of data, there will be unprecedented statistical significance. What is the significance of statistical significance? Well, it is the more samples, the more likely your conclusions and your predictions are, right? Who does not want to know the future? When is this guy going to stop talking, right? Who am I going to marry? Where will I get a job? What should I major in? Will I be healthy? Will my kids be prouder if their old man's really a square, to quote the Beach Boys? Who doesn't want to know? That's why we have tarot cards. That's why we have crystal ball, astrology, right? As humans, we are enamored with the future. The more data we have. Now think about some of the ethical implications of not being wrong. Now, have you ever fantasized about knowing everything, right? From the future, you go back in time, now you know everything. There's ethical implications to that, right? As well. Do you immediately go buy the famous story, right? The stock that you know is going to go up as well. And so we have prohibitions on that type of information today. That's called inside information, by the way, right? That's illegal. We have prohibitions on information and conclusions in healthcare, right? That you, as the patient, should be the first to know in many cases, or your designee. So this is not a new concept, but how do we apply it now to an explosion of new data and new implications? Is this notion of, is it the dawn of something greater, is it the doom for us and will be used, against us? Unprecedented efficiency and productivity. So we're going to have so much spare time in the future. Remember that one? Right, but Parkinson's law? The amount of time you need to do things will do what? Always grow to the amount you have, right? So it doesn't matter per se, but things will get more productive, more efficient. Things will get more easily to predict. And that's why, as I give you a few predictions here, and then we'll have some questions, I believe in the future it will be easy to predict the future. I didn't say in the future it'll be easy to predict the present. I said in the future it'll be easy to predict its future. Why? Primarily based on statistical significance, right? We'll be able to have lots of information that in the past we never thought was relevant to that prediction, right? We have just learned that weather patterns in Alaska do affect weather patterns in South Africa. Maybe we had a hunch, but we never really knew it. Now we've collected enough data. Now we can begin to predict weather, And someday I'd like to know for sure if it's going to rain on Friday, wouldn't you? Someday we might get there, but not yet, right? We don't know, perhaps. Okay, next. In the future, it may be illegal for you to drive a vehicle. Now, I'm not an expert on legal matters, or many matters. I'm not even sure what I'm an expert in any matter. But I will say this. Why would it be illegal to drive a car in the future? You tell me. Because when a machine gets smart enough, which it is not now, to make the split decisions, have enough compute power at the edge, it will be an order of magnitude safer, and society, meaning you, will not want me to drive in your neighborhood, right? Because of that, right? Because of the human error issue. So that's a possibility. This is a theory. In the future, your vital signs and health status will be constantly monitored and constantly and automatically via what? Built-in sensors in your clothes and jewelry. You won't have a choice. On the bottom of this shirt are buttons that I don't use. I didn't have a choice. I didn't say, I'll take the one without buttons. No, it came with buttons. Now, why? It's an accessory just like sensors will be. And you might have the option of turning them on and off. Toothbrushes today can look for disease, cancer cells in the mouth. All that will be happening. What's the implications of that constant micro-vital signs or vital signs being taken? What do you think the implications are? I talked to one lady who said, I don't want to know. But think about why she said that. Because she was concerned if she knew all these things happening, it would be this big worry. But if you take it to the next level, it won't be if you know exactly the outcome. So it's not as if we wonder what that high PSA means. We wonder what that blood test means. We wonder what that skin lesion is. Well, no. It either is benign, so you don't have to concern about it, or it's time to get treatment as well. So it's going to be very fascinating. So we connect to the world today with things that are very, very visual. I can tell when I'm boring because you have this phone you're working on, right, as well. I can tell. But in the future, I won't be able to tell when things like your smartphone will be in a contact lens, right? So I will never know, right? So what am I saying here? We're getting this notion of connectivity, computing, and controlling embedded in things. In jewelry, your Fitbit, right? For example, your smartwatch, it's a thing you have to put on to use it, but it'll be embedded, as well. And then when it is, we already have that with these, the Google Glasses idea. Are you being filmed or not, right? We already have these ethical implications coming up. But at least when somebody has them on, they're unmistakable. Wouldn't you agree? And with that said, what is when it is concealed, when it is not disclosed? Right? What are the ethical implications there? In the future, your body tattoos will be graphics and video connected to the internet. Now, you might say, well, I don't have any tattoos. Oh, yes, you will when this happens. Don't you think? Well, that's this notion of one can put on the skin, and it may not even be permanent, right? And imagine that, being able to move. It's just very fascinating. And I believe in all these, but again, I may not be around to be accountable, for them, but I do think these things will be happening as well. Okay, with technology innovation, it's important to challenge common belief. I'm just leaving you with some advice. For example, there is no evidence in the written account of Humpty Dumpty's great fall that he was an anthropomorphic chicken egg. However, it's universally accepted. Wouldn't you agree? I think every one of you would have told me it's chicken egg. So go back to the original source, right? There's nothing in there that indicates he was a anthropomorphic chicken egg. So you have to challenge common belief, because a lot of times common belief is not true, but a lot of times it is. That's why it's common, but sometimes it isn't. But that's an example. A good team aggressively follows trends. That's important. But a great team sets the trends. Be a great team and be a trendsetter by breaking some of the constraints and having confidence and tenacity in the world of emerging technology. As we shift to this discussion of now we know a lot about this big analog data, the things, and the Internet of Things, and we think about, is it dawn or doom? What do you think? Is it dawn? What do you think? Or is it doom? Dawn? Dawn meaning, the dawn of something good, or is it doom? Okay, most of you say it's dawn. I guess I haven't communicated well enough. Let me fix that. Yeah. What do you think? A little bit of both. What's the most negative thing happening? Privacy. Yes, would you tell us your name, address, and social security number, and comment on the privacy issue, as well. It's time for questions. We have the mics here. If someone would like to, yes, sir, go ahead.
Loved all the physics in your talk and the Little Mermaid reference. That was excellent. So I hope this isn't too far off
That's what
topic.
he got out of the talk. Thank you. Yes.
So you mentioned time and space, and the Big Bang was an analog event. If and when we get scientific instruments accurate enough to measure and sense on the Planck length of time and space, would we essentially be doing a digital-to-digital conversion? And is that a data point that could possibly support the matrix we're in a virtual machine?
Now, how do I fake like I understood your question? Did anybody understand that? All right, no, I know what you're saying here. In fact, one of my former colleagues challenged me on the analogness of stuff such as the digital signals with pulse modulation, with amplitude modulation, and the digitalness. And I think you're saying, though, Is it my opinion that when we get deeper and deeper, we'll discover it to be digital anyway? Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah, it is. Well, that's tough because I'm not trained as a physicist, but I do play one on stage, and there are some, I don't really know how to answer. Can you reword it a little bit? Because you're the only one asking questions. So you get a
Pixels
second one,
are the smallest division. We used to think atoms were the smallest division of something. In Minecraft, it's a voxel. It's a three-dimensional pixel.
Yes.
It seems like physics has told us that the smallest division of time and space is the Planck length of space.
Yes.
Or the Planck.
Are you referring to Max Planck?
Yeah.
All right, I just want to get on the same page with you. Yeah.
I've never planked though. I've never planked.
Not the, yeah.
So if it's impossible for anything smaller than that to exist, that would be the maximum sampling rate. So right now, we can sample analog at frequency per second.
Nyquist would tell us it has to be a certain.
And so if there's an upper limit to sampling rate, then we can say you're sampling at a percentage of reality. And can we directly sample at the Planck time? I mean, I'm not sure what the implications are for big data and sensing, but I thought that might be.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for thinking that I would know that answer. That's a compliment. And let me just respond by saying, I think that you are right, that the amount of data is so enormous, and I think I even touched on it, which maybe brought up your point, that it's all pent up, and we're just understanding how to extract it, and then we're understanding how to find value after we extract it. And it's a little bit like when I was doing my doctoral dissertation with the College of Medicine looking at skin lesions, there was some data that was discarded because it was of skin lesions that was concluded it was unusable. And then I was experimenting with some algorithms, and I was able to, I'll use an older term, mine some information out, and I was able to actually find an outline of a precancerous lesion just because I had if you will, a smarter algorithm to get that level of data. So what was happening is there's information inside which leads me to say, I'm not sure if we'll throw out more data in the future or we'll keep it because we're finding it's valuable, right? And this whole idea of, well, we take out the noise, we data decimate before we send it. How do we know we're not, throwing? So that's conceptually what you're talking about. Now, we get down, will we ever be able to find if the minuteness is infinite, will we ever be able to find sample sizes, or sample technologies and sample rates to get it? It's possible, never. It might be just so deep that in human endeavors we can't get to it. The thing I think of is, how do you prove you did? Because you just said, we used to think this, right? We used to think Pluto was a planet. What happened? I met the guy who allegedly said Pluto's not a planet. And maybe some guy will, follow and say, well, it really is, right? So how do you know? It's so far out there. But that's true. We grow up thinking, all these things about the end of the limits that we've gotten to. And we as humans, we want to say we've achieved it. But it's always good, I think, to say, no, and this is why I personally don't take a lot of the scientific, information. Do you know cyclamates are safe? Hardly anybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Yeah, right. And anyway, so the list goes on of things that scientists said are true and they're not. Some are health related, some are astronomy related as well. I have a magazine, 1956, where there are 3 doctors, physicians, smoking cigarettes, right? So we didn't think that was an issue, now we do as well. We used to think that professional wrestling wasn't real, and now we know. I'm just kidding, go ahead. We used to think chocolate caused acne, Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I am a scientist, and I would like to say scanning on the Planck scale is way too much data. So, but my question is, I was just wondering, as big data becomes more prominent in terms of dictating business actions, how will that, at the point where the business leaders are making their decisions largely based on these big data kind of conclusions, will this influence how the stock market functions when these actions reside on algorithms?
Yes, will the collection, let me rephrase, will the collection of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, will the collection of of lots of data, influence outcomes in an automatic way?
Yes.
Is your point with artificial intelligence, and will we trust it to take immediate action without a human intervening? And then you gave the example of trading, stock trading, high-speed trades, transactions as well. I believe, yes, it'll absolutely get to the point where we'll have enough trust for machines to take over much of the decision-making and the action. One is the autonomous vehicle, right? I don't think it's there now, but eventually, it will be. We already have automatic pilots and things like that, right? So it's just a matter of extent as well. The ethical implications come in is, for example, when it comes to the stock market, who gets that information first and how fast one can act on it is legally regulated. I think you know that, already, right? As well. So will that be true for healthcare distribution? Will it be true for the distribution of other scarce resources, such as food, the deployment, of technology in rural areas versus city areas? I think a lot of that will happen based on human judgment from the point of view of where it goes. But I did answer your question. I really can't think of a lot. I do know, it seems to me that the human mind can tell you it doesn't know something faster than a computer system with the same amount of information. You may have heard that comparison before. So if we had a computer system with all the information that you have in your brain, and we were to ask it, what is my wife's middle name, you could immediately say no. You could guess, but you would say, I don't know, right? It might take a little while for someone to search the databases. So we haven't been able to figure out that connectivity yet in many ways. But maybe, could it happen? It's really hard for me to say, that that's something, actually can't happen. I mean, you can buy a toaster today, send it a selfie, and it will toast your bread with a picture of your face on it. So, I mean, if that can happen, this is why I'm so optimistic. Could you give me an easy question?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, and I'm not as smart as these guys. So I just had a question. Thank you for coming, and I really appreciate
Sure thing.
what you had to say. Could you talk about what you think the implications of jobs when a lot of the industries are taken over by automation, retail and things like that, taken over by automation? Talk about jobs, how that's going to impact people on the lower end of the working class.
First of all, the technology will and always has impacted jobs. I don't think that's debatable. The question is, what is the responsibility of society and the individual to keep up with it? So if one decided to, work with horseshoes only and never changed when horses became less popular, if one has decided, to build cassette players or DVD players, still knowing that the technology is going to another digital. I think that there's got to be a shared responsibility. The individual has to be able to go forward, and if we force all the equal outcomes, it could inhibit some good progress, right? Contrariwise, by the way, this is called dawn or doom for a reason that's balanced. Contrariwise, I think you mentioned some less fortunate or some less capable, right? And those tend to be the ones left behind, I think, is your point, and I'm agreeing with you, and that's very, very difficult. So I do believe we have to have individuals as well as government programs to help with these peoples. That's not a new concept, right, of helping the less fortunate. The metaphor of physically being unable to move to a place that is now famine or without water, right, and people would help the elderly or the ill to move, right? So we need to do that, of course, with jobs as well. I personally don't believe in, but computer science has eliminated more jobs than anything. I think you would agree, right? Because this whole notion of, right, but has it created a lot of jobs too? Well, the entire, IBM company, the Apple company, the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company exists, right? Based on that as well. So we have to look at some statistics, and we have to look at them, objectively on, does this create the jobs balance? And then secondly, so what if it does create the jobs, the people that don't have them can't get them anyway, as your point is. I think it's a real problem and has to be addressed with human compassion. Because without it, the society will, just make decisions based on optimize. We're seeing that today, right? We're making it based on convenience, or we're making them based on somebody's hurt feelings, as well. But we have to have more compassion for these people and these situations that have to be addressed. It's an excellent question. I would end by saying I don't believe technology is a culprit and should be slowed down. You could argue, well, you're saying that because you're in the technology field. I do accept that. But in the bigger picture, because we have seen benefit after benefit, as well. We also have seen the doom part, the negative part. But that's going to be life, trade-off. We have to pray for wisdom and guidance and do it with compassion, make these decisions with compassion. And I think if we do that, we can progress and minimize the doom part and optimize the dawn part. So that's my answer. What else? Why don't we, yes, sir, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question also. Thanks for your talk.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was very interesting. I did kind of feel like you focused a lot on the dawn side and not so much on the doom side, though. So I wanted to ask you particularly about computer hackers, because there's been some big hacks recently where people have, for example, broken into thousands and thousands of IoT devices and harnessed them for like massive DDoS attacks and things like that. And it's really been revealed that the security on a lot of IoT devices is pretty lacking. So if we're connecting more and more of our things to the internet all the time, doesn't that actually make us more vulnerable in a lot of ways? And what can we do about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the word vulnerable, because I would have if you didn't. Because yes, the more things connected, the more things creating data and receiving data make it more vulnerable. And even when you have good security, President Ronald Reagan, being the US president, had the best security in the world. When he went out of the White House one day, what happened? He got shot. Now, why am I saying this? Because of vulnerability, right? He left it. So therefore, the notion is a vulnerability even though there's top-notch security. That dimension is there. The second one is the voluminousness, the opportunity. There's just more things to hack into. Now, more ways to get in as well. It is a huge problem. My company, and I can speak from experience, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, has technologies, ClearPass, Niara, and we're using artificial intelligence to collect lots of data and generate patterns and learn the vulnerabilities in the network and the connectivity. We also have security systems built into the compute engines so that if the connectivity is breached inside, one cannot get into and control, and you get the point. Now, and now I'm going to get some ethical and philosophical here because you asked. We just have to accept that humans will do evil. It's the only thing that's been empirically proven throughout human history, right? And I think regardless of what side you're on, it's a fact. How much they'll do, why they do it, those are debatable and all that, but the facts are it's going to happen. And I was talking to a large software company who's bragging about all their security and their new software, and I said, you're competing with 1.5 million teenagers with nothing to do. You get what I'm saying here? Now, these aren't even people who want to make hacking for a living. They just want to hack. And therefore, the problem is going to be absolutely huge. But there are ways to get around it. The reason I had been a little more dawnish than doomish, as you said, is because I've seen where those issues have not affected the progress of some of the examples. I said, so it does exist. In fact, I've come to the conclusion that the highest risk in not implementing intelligent edge in IoT, so the highest risk is not implementing it. I said that wrong, but let me repeat it. The highest risk is not implementing it. So you won't get the business benefits or the societal benefits or the healthcare benefits as well. There is going to be risk all the time. There's always risk. There's risk of your store being looted, right, or broken into on a physical level constantly as well. So therefore, big business, big opportunity. I would encourage people to get into it, and I would encourage people to think of ways to beat the bad guys, as well, because the consequences are absolutely significant when obviously, when you get a hold of this data. So I'm again, my money's where my mouth is. My company is doing a lot in this area because we see it as a big deal. We can't do it alone. It's got to be a cooperative effort. There are other big companies doing great things in this area. Maybe you are in that. Are you in that business as well?
No, I'm a sociologist. I study digital rights and security rights.
That's interesting, yeah. A whole new world. Who owns the data is the big one. Yeah. My dishwasher produces data. Who owns it? Does the owner of the product own it, or as well? That's a really big debate. I have an opinion that the owner of the product producing the data under the ownership, kind of like similarly to a parent is responsible for the child's behavior. I believe in that level of ownership. Not everybody agrees, with me. Okay, next question. Yes, by the way, we're going to open it up to not just my topic, but all computer science. You can ask a question. And if we don't get it, we'll open it up to comprehensive of all human knowledge. You can answer.
Thank you for your talk. Well, I would like to know if big data is going to control the future, in the near future, big data is going to have a big impact. So many people don't have any understanding about big data, how they're going to cope up with that. Is it going to be more user-friendly?
Yeah, many people don't have an understanding of big data and how to deal with the data and also the results. And is it going to become more user-friendly? I believe it has to, because it is overwhelming. I know of a company that stopped collecting data because they're going to spend the next 10 years analyzing it. Can you imagine that? And that wasn't even supposed to be funny. But it's overwhelming, right? Because how much is enough to know statistical significance, right? And then, so we have two dimensions of big data coming at us with things. One is we got existing things producing more because we're sampling them faster and we want more out of that engine. And then we got new things like, your toasters and your watch and things, right, that are coming. So we have new sources of data and we got new existing sources, right, happening to make it enormous. So again, another opportunity in addition to security, as we just spoke about, is the notion of being able to make sense out of it and provide the insight. And I think it's a little bit farther than that. It's not only make sense in the insight, but just tell me what to do. Just get the action. Have you ever been in a meeting where everybody talks, collects data, analyzes it, and then you leave as if you never had the meeting, right? No action taking place. So that happens in business. It happens all the time. And so if we can get to the action part quicker, should I or should I not, go to the physician with this health data? Should I not get the repair done? I think driving it to action, we can then abstract the enormity and complexity of the big data. That's my point of view.
Yeah.
We're going to have to, there's people who want this room, believe it or not, after you. So we're going to.
Very good.
But I do want to thank Tom Bradicich. This has been a great way to end.
Thank you.